Right, time for a quick sound check to make sure everything's working. So if you can hear this loud and clear, if you just pop a comment in the live chat for me, that'd really help. Thanks very much, and assuming everything's working, I will see you in, well, 10 minutes by the looks of it. Just time for me to go and make a cuppa. See you later. Hello. Hello, welcome to this week's In Studio Live. It's great to have everyone here. I can see, according to my stats, I've got 20 concurrent viewers already. I think that must be a record at this stage in the show. So welcome everyone. And do say hello in the live chat if you're able to, and particularly let me just say welcome to a few of you that I've seen in there. Richard, Anthony, John, Peter, Walter, Andy, Raymond, Tim, Terry, Michael, Bob, Andy, and another Peter. So welcome all. I'm sure there's others on there. So it's great to have you here for this week's show. And to the regulars, did you notice the difference on the countdown images? I finally solved the problem as to why we were only seeing a limited number of images. More names coming in already. Jill, Pauline, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Yeah, the slideshow capability in OBS, which is the software I use for streaming the shows, limits it to, I think, 40. Well, actually, it's not 40 images. It's to do with the total size of the number of images in a slideshow. So that's why I was only getting a limited number through. We were seeing the same images over and over again. So I've now got a different way of doing that opening slideshow. So there's hundreds of them now. So hopefully you'll see some different images on there if you tune in early. More people joining us. Evening, Amir, as well. Good to have you here. Right, so there may be a few people who are new to the live stream, so let me start by just going through the housekeeping and the general information about the shows. They are weekly. This is week 32. Started 2 weeks before the March lockdown, and I haven't missed a week yet. Hopefully I'm going to keep that up as well. They live on YouTube for quite a while, actually. Eventually they will get cut down, and the full versions go into my academy, and sort of extracts and highlights get put up on YouTube. The reason I say that is if you are new to it and want to and you enjoy tonight and you want to see some more, you can look back through the back catalogue. There's a whole load of them there. So 31 of them actually, in various forms. So go take a look at those. And what else? I try to keep it interactive. I do try and encourage people to join for the live, although you can see this on the replay during the week. It's great to have you here live because you can ask questions in the chat, and it keeps it interactive instead of me just spouting what I think you might want to hear. If I'm talking total rubbish, you can tell me to shut up, you can tell me what you think, and you can answer some of my questions as well, because when we get onto your images, sometimes I won't know some of the background behind an image, and I'll ask and the information comes in there. But it also means we've got this live Q&A coming up as well. So if you've got any photography related questions, stick your questions in the live chat and I'll try and cover them. A couple of points within the show on there. A little bit of a delay, so do get them in early so that I hear them or see them before we get to that point. And if you're watching this on the replay, then put questions in the comments. I do read every comment that is posted to my channel, and I reply to them all as well. So it'd be great to see some comments in there. Now, if you're watching it live, you can't put comments until the thing's finished and processed by YouTube, but if you're on the replay, that's the place for them. You can also ask your questions via email as well. Okay, so helping out with the live stream, do subscribe. If you like the show, I'll remind you at the end anyway, if you find it helpful, then please subscribe on YouTube, and that means you won't miss next week. Also helps me having that. Put comments in, both in the chat and there. make it interactive, and hit the like button. And I can see already we've got 14 likes on there, so there's still a few of you who haven't hit the like button, so go off and do that. Right, and share the links. Thank you to everyone who does. Peter Saltiel shares it regularly in one of his Facebook groups, and I don't know whether we've got anybody from that group watching tonight. If we have, then welcome to the show. It's great to have you here, and if you get the chance to share it in other places, do let people know about this. Right, there is another way you can help as well. There's a link I have on my YouTube videos, and it's not one I normally talk about. I just put it there, but I wanted to talk about it tonight, and it's to do with cups of tea. You've probably heard of BuyMeACoffee. Well, I don't drink coffee. I famously don't drink coffee. So I have a link on mine which will enable you to buy me a cup of tea. It is actually still run by the BuyMeACoffee website, but mine says buy me a cup of tea, and that's the link. It's also down below the video. So if you do find these helpful and you just want to find a way just to say thank you financially, they do cost me to actually put these on. It's part of my business plan, yes, but there are expenses. So, for example, this week I've purchased some software which I had hoped I would be able to show editing on the mobile phone for images. Unfortunately, it's not working properly. I'm sure it's just a setup thing that I need to sort out. So things like that. There are expenses. So if you feel you want to help, then you've got the option there. And I'll give a shout out to anybody who does. And this week's shout out is to Graham Hunter. Thank you for tonight's cup of tea on there. And yeah, I'll leave it with you. I'm not going to talk any more about that. But my thanks to Graham for supporting me in that way. And anybody else who does, I'll give you a shout out next time. Right, Facebook. I have my Facebook group, link again over my shoulder. If you're not a member of that, then do come and join us. That's where the conversation carries on during the week, and we preview what's going on in the week on there, and have discussions on there. There's been some great image sharing going on there this week, particularly the black and white stuff. I've been really impressed with the images I've been seeing there, and I'm going to share some of them tonight on the show. There's things like lists of blog topics and general information about what's going on with the live stream, with photography in general, and things like that. And lots of people helping each other out on there. So do go and join that. And I have a newsletter. Again, the link's there and link down below as well. So sign up for that if you've not already. I am trying to get a newsletter out. Every time I write something, then the government goes and changes the rules. I'm trying to get something out about what I can do at the studio. And I think I'm still allowed to do studio hires and one-to-one and things like that. But I've delayed it again because I think that's going to change tomorrow. So I'll wait for tomorrow's announcement, and then hopefully I can get that out to you. A little bit about what's going on here and how the COVID-19 restrictions are affecting studios. So hopefully in the next couple of days with that. So what have we got on the show tonight? Well, news section's very, very brief this week. I'm going to share one of the 12020 Challenge videos, Andy Grady's this week. And we are looking at black and white conversions and black and white images. And I've got a lot to say about that. I've got even more photos to share because there's been so many that you've put in the Facebook group this week. So I'll be going through your images. There's some I've picked to do full conversions on to really help you get to grips with the techniques. And others I'm just going to talk about briefly and scan through and give a little bit of feedback on there. So the live conversions and image feedback, as I say, and we've got the live Q&A when the time comes within the show. So what's the news? Well, the news is really the thing I'm trying to get out as a newsletter item, a blog post, which is all about studio hires and one-to-one sessions still being available here. And I hope that's still going to be the case after tomorrow. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But at the moment, they are still available, which means if you need a space for doing some photography, I'm here for you. If you want to get some proper training, then I'm here for you as well. So do come and get in touch if that's something, and I can work with you to really get you up to speed. And we can do it in a COVID mitigated scenario. I've got lots of things in place here to reduce the risk of COVID during both of those. So hopefully you'll be coming along. Right, so Q&A, part 1. Let's have a look what we've got in the chat. Right, so let's have a look. The various hellos. Anybody I haven't said hello to? Hello. Right, from AB Music, from Anthony. He says, let's play a game. Professional versus amateur. Who's on here tonight? Amateur, phone, camera photographer. Ah, right, yeah. So who are the amateurs? Who are the professionals? Who are the hobbyists on there? That's an interesting question on that. I've never really asked because the boundaries do blur these days between the two. We have semi-professionals, we have full-time professionals, we have enthusiasts, and we have happy snappers. And you're all welcome here, wherever you are on that. So, yeah, Andy Wright says about the owl photos, and I just want to talk about those. Andy, I'm not going to show them tonight, and that's not because I'd forgotten about them. I had them lined up for tonight, but I've got so much that's black and white that I felt that if I tried to do them tonight, they're going to get pushed out, and I'd be going through them I'd be going through them too quickly. I wouldn't do it justice. So I do want to go through and do a bit of a feedback on that set for you, but it won't be tonight. It may be next week or the week after. It just depends on what else I've got coming in. I'm giving priority to things which tie in with the theme for the night, but they will not get forgotten. I promise you that, Andy. And you've got some great images there, but I want to talk about them properly on there. What else have we got in chat? People talking about amateurs on there. Hobbyist, happy snapper. Amir, you are more than a happy snapper. On there. You might not be doing it professionally, but you are more than just a happy snapper. Your work's really come along over recent years on there. And Pauline, great, you use what you call a proper camera and a phone as well. Yeah, both are equally valid depending on what the scenario is on there. Jill, hobbyist, Bob, hobbyist. Well, you're all welcome here. Right, okay, so Q&A. Just to reiterate, put your questions in the chat. There is the delay, or contact me during the week with any questions. Tonight, we got that in there twice. Yeah, I've got a question that came in from Peter, and this goes back a little while, and it's the reason I've got the theme tonight. And his question that he asked me was concerning black and white editing of a colour photograph. Is there a, quote, textbook rule for the colour sliders within the black and white conversion, or is it personal choice? Well, that is the thing that really has kicked off tonight's theme, all about black and white, because it's not about rules for black and white conversion, it's about tools. It's about really having a toolbox of techniques that you can use to do your conversions, and I'm going to go through those tools and show you some of them in use tonight. Sadly, as I mentioned earlier, I won't be able to show you on the phone, which is really annoying, because what's happening, just in case anybody's interested in why I can't, I've got some software so that my screen here appears on my laptop, but when I try to capture it and broadcast it, it just comes out as a black rectangle rather than what I'm seeing on the screen. So I don't know what it is, but I will try and get that sorted, because there are techniques I want to show on the phone, because as we've just seen, some of you are using the phone for your photography, and I want to be able to give you a few hints and tips on there. So my apologies that I can't do that tonight on there, but we will come back to that at some point. But black and white conversion is about tools rather than rules, about techniques on there. And there really isn't a one-size-fits-all. So I wouldn't say you must follow the following steps on there. But if I go through different ways of converting, hopefully you can start to see a pattern of decision making rather than anything else on there. And having said all that, there is just one rule I would say about black and white conversions, and I think it is the one rule that we do need to remember, and it's this: get your exposure right first. There is a tendency for some people to think of black and white conversions as a tool for saving images that didn't work. That's not what black and white conversions is about. You must get your exposure right first. What do I mean by that? Well, ideally, get it right in camera, so that when you make that initial image, it's correctly exposed for what you envisage in the end on it. If for any reason you have an image that isn't correctly exposed, before you start doing your black and white conversion, get the exposure sorted out first, and then think about your black and white conversion, because if you do that first, that will make the conversion so much easier and so much more effective, rather than trying to sort it out once you've done that conversion, because you can't do the conversion properly. If it's all dark or if it's all overexposed, you won't be able to see how you need to do it. So there is one rule: get the exposure right first. And remember this fact: a black and white conversion isn't going to fix a badly exposed image. It might rescue boring images at times, but it's not there as a fix. It's there as a way to enhance a scene. And what I find with most of my black and white photography is I'm thinking black and white at the time I'm making the image. And if I'm doing that at that point, then that really helps me concentrate on what I need to do to make the image work. So let's look at some of the tools that are available. Let's think about Lightroom first of all. I'll talk about the tools first, and then I'll go over into Lightroom and show you some of the tools in action. Well, the first tool, and I mentioned it under Lightroom, but any photo editing software, this is the way just about all of us started with our black and white conversions. We took the saturation slider and slid it all the way down to 0. That gives you a black and white image. It does not give you a good black and white image. It is not a good way to do a black and white conversion. Does that mean you never use it? Never say never. Have I used it? I can't think I've used it in probably about 15, 16 years as a way of converting an image. So I mention it with the caveat of it's not the best way to do it. Don't think about doing that unless you absolutely have to. If the software you're using has no other way of doing it, then yes, it's a tool that you might want to use. Much better in Lightroom is to go with one of the monochrome profiles, and I'll show you those in a moment. There are a whole load of them built in, and they do a black and white conversion in different ways in there, and different levels of contrast, different looks and things like that. And then once you've done that, that opens up the black and white color mix sliders, and again I'll show you those and what you would use them for, and they will allow you to pick how bright a particular color is, how it translates from a particular color to a shade of gray, whether it's almost white, completely black, or somewhere in between on there. The next tools that are really important with black and white conversion are contrast, clarity, and texture. Because the best types of images for black and white conversion tend to be those with a bit of texture to them. We want to see that. We want to see the difference between light and dark, and these three tools will enable you to do that and to bring that out. So again, I'm going to show you those as we go on. So contrast, clarity, texture. And also the tone curves, and that's another way of bringing out contrast, lightening some areas, darkening other areas. We've also got local adjustment brushes and vignettes. I don't need to say too much about vignettes. Most of you know I'm a big fan of them, but they are a really useful tool with black and white conversions as well. So let's head over into Lightroom, and I'll try and show you some of these techniques in play. So just give me a moment to pull Lightroom up, and there we go. Right, what I want to do, I want to start off by working with an image which will show some of the techniques on here. So it's this particular one. Now, what I need to say about this image is not designed for black and white. And it's not an image I want to have in black and white, but it's one that's really good at showing some of the techniques for black and white conversion. And you'll understand why as I go through it. So first of all, we're in the Basic tab, and we need to just get the settings. Well, I'm not far off on this. On there, bring up maybe just a little bit of, no, I'll leave the contrast as it is. I'm happy with those as the settings. So let's say this is an image I want to convert to black and white. The first thing I said about black and white conversion, and what I did there, so I've got my notes in front of me to help me, was the monochrome profile. Now your profiles are up here in Lightroom, and if we click on that, you can see, well, by default you just have Adobe Monochrome and then the browse option. I have pinned black and white 3 because I use it a lot on there. But if I hit browse, which is the same as hitting that grid there, I can look through these different profiles. Now, if we come down here, we've got, right, 1, 2, and you can see each of them converts the image in very different ways as you go through. So my favorites tend to be 7 and 3 on here, and you can see number 3, I've got the star by it because I put it on favorites. Number 7, I haven't put on favorites for some reason. I can do that by, if you hover over it, I can just click on the star and that becomes on my favorites, so it's then on that drop down menu in there. So you can just choose one which gets you close to where you want. Now, let's just sort of talk through these. How many have we got? 10, 12. Yeah, 12 different black and white ones supplied by Adobe. And they all are subtle in different ways, and they will all work slightly differently. So for this particular image, I would say that number 9 looks quite good. If I go to number 10, you'll see it's a bit flat. I like things to be a bit contrasty. 12, well, that plugs up a lot of the blacks on there. And the idea is you just go through here until you find one that looks close to what you want. So 5's not bad. 9, no, that's 7. No, 7's not bad for that. Then we've got a set at the bottom which represent or simulate the equivalent of using black and white filters on a camera. Now, for those who've done black and white photography before, you will know that black and white photographers live and die by colour filters. Now that may sound bizarre, but if you do certain things with colour filters, it affects your image. So for example, a red filter will only really let the red light through, which means things like that are blue will go dark. So if I select that, can you see how the blue parasol, which is the one on the left, goes dark, but the red parasol, because a red filter lets the red light through, remains light. If I go to the blue filter, on the other hand, this one, we'll find now blue light's coming through, so the blue one is looking, so I'm going to click that and compare it to the red. So red, blue, red, blue. Can you see how it affects? The green parasol in the middle, if I do that one, it doesn't show that much difference with this because that green parasol isn't actually green. It's actually a bluey green on it. So that simulates those different filters that you would put on to get that different colour mix live in camera with a film camera that people used to use. So this simulates it. So you've got that option there. Red's always quite a good one with it. But it is plugging up the blues a little bit on there. So if you don't want it quite as much, you might want to go to orange or even yellow with that. Or blue, they're more or less the same. I'm actually going to start with one of the others. I'm going to go with my, actually that's number 9, isn't it? Yeah, that's number 9 I've put on the favourites. Don't want that on favourites. I want number 7 on favourites because I do use it a lot, but I'm actually going to select number 9 as my base on this. So I have now selected a profile. That's closest to what I want, and I can then close it. And just to show you, on here now, it's still got number 9 as the favourite, never mind. But the ones I've specified as favourites appear on the list there. So I'm slightly confused. I'm on 11 apparently. Anyway, doesn't matter. That's the one I'm on. So having done that, the next stage is to really, I would come down to the black and white tabs here. Now this, if I'd had a color profile, you actually watch that. If I change this for some reason to Adobe Color, that becomes HSL Color. But when it's like that, that becomes black and white. Now, what does this do? This allows me to control how an individual colour is translated. So, we already know that this parasol was the red one. So if I use the red slider, I can darken that parasol or I can make it white, because I'm controlling all the red within the image. So that allows me to get a set of colours that I want. The blue slider will allow me to control how dark the sky is, but it also plugs up this particular parasol. Now, this is a green one, or it appears green, but you can see actually what's getting controlled there is the sea, because that's where the greens are in my image. Just reset that. So what colour is it then? Easiest way to do it is this particular thing. If I go full screen on this, this particular tool here, I click on that, and you can see my mouse changes. I put it over a colour, and if I click and drag up, it works out what colour's underneath it and starts changing it. And you can see as I do it, anything that matches changes. Now, unfortunately, it changes the sea as well, but I can come up and I could make it a sort of a mid-tone between those. So I've got control like that. It's quite nice to do it with the sky. That's a way of controlling your sky, to get that darkness in there that you might want. So we've got that level of control with our images. So that's my next stage in a conversion, the way I would do it. So I'd now look at this image and think, right, well, what's my problems with it? Well, I've got a problem down here with these lounges. They are way too dark. So can I remember what colour the lounges are? No. So I use this tool, put it on there, and they're blue. And I can't do that because it's affecting the sky. So I need to find another way just to lighten or change the colour of those. So let's try using things like the contrast at this point. And that's the next thing I would do. And I tend to just move the contrast one way or the other and see what effect it has on my image. And bringing it up is starting to bring that sky how I want it, but at the cost of the lower half of the image. So I'm just going to bring that back out, back to the middle, just slightly up on there. I still would like those a little bit lighter. So the shadows, can I do it with my shadows slider? And I can do a little bit on there. So that's starting to look like it, but I'd like a bit more contrast and detail in the sky. So this is where I might look at, well, a couple of things. I could use a graduated filter to do it, but there is another tool, anything to do with the sky, the dehaze tool. Can you see how that really brings that back? But again, we're plugging up that umbrella that I don't want plugged up. I like my sky, don't like my umbrella. The solution here is where we now need to use local adjustment brushes to actually get this to work. So at this point, I'm going to use, up here, adjustment brush, or K, on there. And again, full screen on this. And I reset everything first of all, and I am going to pick the shadows slider, and I'm going to bring that all the way up, quite high, give myself a fairly large brush, and I'm going to set the flow quite low, which means I can paint on here and just do it in sort of stages. As I start to paint on it, it should start getting lighter. I'm going to do a little bit with the exposure on there as well, and we can see that's starting to happen now. A little bit more. The more I paint, the lighter it gets. If I want to see how much I've got on there, the overlay, that's the thing. And unfortunately, I've now ended up with a very bright pole on there. Does that? I can take that back on the exposure. So if I do that and then just bring the highlights down to bring that pole back in, hopefully we'll do it. And those shadows right up. And I can't really get that much brighter on there. Now the detail is there, I can see it on the screen. I think my monitor tends to be a little bit dark in here. It's partly to do with the amount of ambient light I've got on there. So we've got that. And we're pretty much along the lines of a conversion with that. I've managed to maintain 3 different greys for the umbrellas I've got there. And finally, it's a case of, do I want a vignette on here? So let's see, with effects, I'll do my usual thing, just pull the vignette in further than I want it, bring the midpoint in, I think, a little bit on there, and I'm going to feather it all off. Now, usual trick with my vignettes, as many of you will know how I do this, having brought the vignette in, I'm going to now put my mouse on it, put my hand over there, and I'm going to bring it up until I think the vignette's more or less gone. And that looks to be about it. Now you will see the slider, I can't, and we'll see where the slider actually is on it. The first time ever when I've done that, I've ended up at 0. So what that tells me is I actually don't need a vignette on here, because it's that point, and you'll probably see me do this in one of the other images later, that that conversion with the vignette, I like it just to be so subtle. If I can still see the vignettes there, I'm not happy with it. So on this one, it turned out 0 was the right one on there all along. So that's some of the tools for doing the conversions in Lightroom. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to go over and do a similar conversion in Photoshop. Now, the first thing, I'm going to work with this image, and the first thing I said with any black and white conversion, get your exposure right first. Now, I could do this all in Photoshop, but I'm actually better off doing it in Lightroom for me on there. So basic, I want to get the white balance right on there, and I think I just need to bring the exposure up very slightly on that, a little bit on the shadows, so I've got some detail in there. It's not, are we plugged up? A little bit, still plugged up on there, so bring the exposure up just a little bit more, and bring the blacks up just a little bit. So there, I've got a correctly exposed image now, and I'm going to go over into Photoshop to do the edit on it. So right click, edit in Adobe Photoshop. And while that's doing that, I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat and see what's going on in there. So you can see that, I can't actually. Right, okay, so what have we got in the chat? Anything new while I've been doing this? Oh, Gary saying, can I maximize the screen? I have done. Yeah, really sorry. We need a better way. I need a better way of getting the chat on the screen when I'm editing. Because when I go over to Lightroom, I lose the chat on there. So sorry I didn't have that on there. I'll try and have the screen maximized as much as I can on that. And that appears to be the only bit on there. So let's go over to, hopefully, nope. Let's get that. Right, yes, I'm now in PowerPoint, not PowerPoint, Photoshop, and I'll go full screen. Right, okay, so now I'm in here. I'm going to do my conversion in here. Now, the various tools are available. The first thing I always do when I go into Photoshop is I convert that from background layer to being an actual layer. It's just force of habit, and I do it, control click on there, I can give it a name, man, on there, with that, and I'm going to use various adjustments. Now, if that window is not open, if you go to the Window tab and select the adjustments off there, adjustments, you can select them directly off there, or alternatively, you can do adjustment layers down below here by selecting that, and I'm going to work with, actually, before I do, let me just go back over to my slides. I should have talked through this first. in Photoshop, the tools I'm going to use: tone mapping as an adjustment layer, black and white adjustment layer. We're going to talk about curves and masking on there. So those are the tools. And let me go back over. So let's start with tone mapping. You can get it off here, if I find the right one. And I can never remember which icon it is. I find it often easier on here to come off the menu, and we are going to go with gradient map, sorry, not tone map, gradient map. And what the gradient map does is it maps a particular brightness to a somewhere on this gradient tool. So at the moment it's brown to black, so you can see all the colours have actually mapped to that. That's not what we want. So I use the down arrow, go to the basics one and select black and white. And that's given me already quite a simple, straightforward, nice contrasty conversion. And the fact that it's a layer in its own right means I can turn it on and off. So that gives me a good starting point, but that's not the only thing I want to use. What's the other way of doing it? And that's the black and white conversion layer, which is here. And you'll find this looks very similar to what we've been using in Lightroom, where we can control different, so the blues, for example. Of course, he's got a blue jacket on. I can change what sort of shade of grey I want that to look at, to appear. And the cyans, which are in there as well. So if I wanted quite a dark jacket, I can bring both down with that. Skin tones. Skin tones tend to be the sort of reddy colours, so I can control the skin tones, sort of really darken them down or lighten them up, depending on the sort of effect and contrast that I want. And I can do it with all of them. So I can do this idea again, as I did before. Instead of up and down, as it is in Lightroom, it's left to right in Photoshop. Don't you just love it when Adobe are consistent like that? So I can control that using the slider there, so it's very similar sort of thing. Now, here's one of the little tricks. If you bring that below the gradient map, we start off getting a reasonable control there. We can then bring back the gradient map, and that just makes it that little bit more contrasty of an effect on there. And it just really nice with that. Now, if you don't know about these gradients, one of the sort of things you can do is you can actually put other colours in there. So I can have a mid colour on this, and I'm going to say I want this to be a sort of bluey colour, but a sort of grey blue. So in the middle, and I can, okay, I'll leave that. And oh, I've managed to delete it. Never mind. No. This is always one of those that if I click on there, I've got the midpoint. I can control. Now, it doesn't do it live. I bring it all the way up here, everything will go dark. Bring it all the way down here, and it goes bright, because it's controlling that mapping. And it's such a pain. This is why I tend to do it in Lightroom, by the way, because I always find this quite a pain to control. And I just move it along to where I think I've got the right balance in there. So I quite like that. And just to show the effect of the two different parts of it, this is with just the gradient map. That's just with the black and white, and that's with both. And it just gives you that much more control over your image when you do it in Photoshop that way. Now, the next thing with this image is we want really a sort of a vignetting effect on it. So there's a nice way to do that. And one way to do that is with curves. So I'm going to put yet another adjustment layer over the top of it. And this one's going to be the curves, which is on here. So I put that on. And what I'm going to, well, actually, let's undo that for the moment. Because what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a selection on here to indicate where my vignette's going to go. So I could do the elliptical tool. I could use a lasso. What am I going to use? Polygonal lasso. And I'm going to say I want a big feather on this. I'm going to say something like 300. And with that, I'm just going to go very, very roughly. This is the sort of area. Oops, not quite right, but there we go. I'm going to say that. Now, when I add my adjustment layer, curves, this is where I find I've done it the wrong way around, and indeed I have. So what I do is select that, Control I inverts it. So now I've got a mask as I created that curve. And as I change the points here, I'm just controlling the areas outside that masked section that I've created. So I've got the ability to sort of darken it down and create a vignette that way. And have I got it lined up right? If not, I can click on it, remove the link, and then I can actually move my vignette around to where I want it to just make sure the face is nice and light on there. So again, that's one way of doing black and white conversions using Photoshop and using some of the tools on there. So what have I shown with that? I've shown tone mapping, I've shown the black and white adjustments layer, the curves for changing the contrast on there, but then masking it so it's only certain areas with it. So those are the sort of tools that are available to you on that. So let's again have a look what's going on in chat, if anything. And I've lost my version of it. And there's absolutely nothing else in chat from last time on there. Right, so let's move on with this. What else can we use for black and white conversion? Well, there are additional tools like Silver Effects Pro. Again, I was thinking of trying to demo that tonight and then realised I haven't actually, since I moved over to my new machine, I haven't got it installed, so I've had to abandon that one. Snapseed was what I was going to demonstrate on the phone. I can't do that because the software is not working. And Affinity, well, I don't currently have a copy of Affinity. I am going to get it. So I think in a few weeks' time, maybe a month or so, maybe longer, I will come back to black and white and look at other tools for it, and we'll look at Silver Effects, we'll look at Snapseed, and we'll look at Affinity, because I know some of you are using those, and it would be good to actually go through those techniques on there. A question that I think is worth asking: what makes a good black and white image? I said right at the start, I think about black and white when I start off, when I'm actually making the images. So what makes a good black and white image? Oh, there's a typo. I've had a double bounce on the word image. Right. You want an image, in my view, that has has the full range of brightnesses. So your final black and white image will have some nice dark blacks in there, not necessarily all plugged up, but you want something that's really a true black somewhere or very close to it, and some true whites in there. So you want that full range of brightnesses within your image. I think that works better than ones which are only partly, that are mainly in the dark areas. You see a few of those. In fact, I'll show some later. I think it's better with a full range. Even if the majority is in one area, you want those little highlights or those little dark areas somewhere in it. And a good contrast as well, so that the best way I can describe it is a bit of bite to your image with that. And above all, you want a good composition. Black and white conversion is no excuse for not composing correctly. It's not something that will save a bad composition. So get your composition right in camera, then you can convert. Get your exposure right in camera, then you can convert. So think about those three things when you're making your image. Right, at this point, let's have a look at some of your black and white images. Excuse me a moment. So I'll just go over to Lightroom and pull up some of your images, and I'm going to talk a bit about them. Now, with the images that I'm looking at tonight, I've got various ones I want to talk about, and I've got so many images that you submitted, folks, this time, that what I've done is I've got a few I want to do some significant edits on, and some I just want to do a very quick review of and make comments about. So I'm going to do the first half of the ones I want to make quick comments about and draw out a few things first. So let's have a go with these. Actually, I'll do it that way. No. There we go, full screen. Right, one from Amir, a table tennis player. I like the contrast on this. I'd be interested to know, Amir, whether the background being true black on there was effectively how you recorded it, or whether you've cut him out and stuck him on a black background. Either way, it works, and I think that one works nicely. Another one from Amir, and the black and white conversion on this is really good. With it, I like the conversion. Compositionally, though, I'd like to see the person a little bit further over on this side, so that she's looking in and obscuring less of the mural on that, because we've got this big blank area over here that's not adding anything to our image. So I'd like to see that on there. But the black and white conversion is really good. And this one I really like. It's well composed. It's an unusual angle, but it's one that works. It's a model called Thaddeus. I've worked with him a couple of times, not for a good few years, but the pose is good. Normally, I wouldn't recommend this looking down on a person, but it works here. And you've got that range of tones that we talked about. We've got the little highlights, the catch lights that are bright in the eyes. We've got the dark shadows underneath. The whole thing really works on there. So the composition works nicely on that, Amir. And this one I put in, I think it's just a fun shot. I rather like it. It was taken at Tough Mudder. One of those events. Amir did tell me, but I can't remember what it is now. And again, we've got the brightness of the smile, the darkness of the shadows on there. We've got that range of tones. Works nicely. I do wonder whether it needs a vignette on there. Haven't got time to do it myself, but maybe experiment with that. on there. This is a fun one from Bill. He chose a black and white conversion to make the background less obvious on there. The only thing I would say about this, Bill, is I think it's a little bit soft on the eyes. You can see our point of focus seems to be closer to the pores rather than on the eyes. So just watch your focusing on that. But lovely shot, and black and white conversion to hide the background really works, because that is what it looks like without the black and white conversion, which is a little bit cluttered on there. And nice to see that you're using a vignette as well to help hide some of the clutter behind on that. Bob, I've included this one because you did a black and white conversion on it. Obviously adding in the lightning in post-production. I'm guessing that's done with a set of lightning brushes to make it work. And I do like it. I think the colour version is much better than black and white. And that's, oh, what happened there? That's better. And that's a point to make. Not every image works as a black and white. Some images do actually work better in colour. This one, a nice one from Bob. Nice conversion. That contrast is there that we've talked about between the structure and the hook. Having seen the colour version of this, the hook was practically silhouette anyway on there, so works nicely. The strong diagonal in there is a great compositional element. It acts as a lead-in line. We've got the composition just really works, and the black and white conversion works on it. Again, another one with a good black and white conversion. I'd like to see this just a fraction more contrasty on that one, I think, with it, and maybe just down very, no, barely any difference on that. Just that little bit of contrast on there, maybe with the clarity, just to bring that up a little bit on there. With that, anyway, with that. Carol, I think part of the problem I've got here is I've got a poor low resolution shot. Black and white conversion, not bad. A vignette might help with the sky, or at least a slightly darkening of the sky. I think with this, one of the things you've done is you've put the train quite close to the edge. I would have been tempted to step back a bit so that the train is a little bit further back, so we've got something for it to go into on the image. And by doing that, you then actually have a lead-in line leading you into the train. Because at the moment, the lead-in lines are taking us down to here rather than to what our subject is, which is the train. So a little bit further back and have the train start about here in the frame. So all you needed to do was move back a little bit or take the shot a little bit earlier. Actually, better if you move back so that it's not hidden by the lamppost. But that would have been my suggestion with that shot. But reasonable black and white conversion on there. This is a really good black and white conversion, apart from the blacks being just a little bit plugged up there. So I would just open those up just slightly on that with it. Maybe a touch on the exposure, just so that we can see the detail within there. And I think that works nicely. Good composition, like the fact that we've got just a third on the sky, the rest land. The main boat, our main subjects on the third line, it's balanced with the others behind. It all just works on there. And I love the crop on this. This is one of those where filling the frame is the right thing to do. We've got a nice, almost abstract bit of sculpture on there, and it works well on that. One from Dan Archer on here, and I've included this one because it raises a few interesting points on this to do with street photography. And I think in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to do a session where we concentrate on street photography and look at some of the topics on there. Compositionally wise, Dan, I don't know whether you're watching this, but I would crop it slightly differently. I never like cropping through someone's neck here, and that feels a little bit awkward. I would think if we just bring it down very slightly on there, I think that crop is just that little bit better rather than going through the neck. It's a minor thing. Black and white conversion looks fine on there, but just compositionally needs a little bit of a tweak to it on that. Oh, from David Jones, a strong man exercising by turning over a tyre. He did say in his notes it wasn't one of his best images. I think black and white conversion is not bad, but it appears a little bit plugged up at the bottom again. So I would want to bring out a little bit more detail in those shadows. And part of the problem with this might be the angle it was shot at, but that bright sky is drawing our eye away from the subject with it. But the black and white conversion's good. This one from Eric Holmes. I don't know whether you're watching, Eric, but I've included this because I often comment about getting the vertical straight and the horizontal straight, and this is a perfect example of doing that. Everything is square on, and you've just got it absolutely spot on there. So I really like that. From Gary, this is interesting. I wasn't sure about it at first, and then I looked up and realised we've got the wall that's effectively behind Gary in the shot, looking up there. So it's a really interesting perspective of Wells Cathedral. How do I know that? Because of that famous crossover arch there. I love Wells Cathedral. I spent a whole day photographing it many years ago with that. I'm not sure about the split toning on it though, Gary. I would prefer this as straight black and white. So I'm just going to take your split toning out. And this is the time where I would use the saturation because I want to see what it looks like. And for me, maybe a touch more contrast in there and a touch more clarity, I think. Something like that. Not much more clarity, just a little bit on there. So I would do that. So before, after. Again, it's personal preference, but I prefer to see it as true black and white rather than with the split tone on that one. This one took me a little bit of a while to work out what I was looking at. It looked like an Escher painting of some description. But actually, it's the steps going up, and that's the underside of them carrying on. And it's because, presumably, with a super wide angle, it's given a very distorted look. Rather like it. And this is a weird one. When I see this large, or even full screen, I really, really like it. But when I saw it as a thumbnail, I didn't like it. I don't like that version of it, but I do like that version. So how weird is that with there? Again, nice black and white conversion with it. And I've got to include this one because when I saw it, I immediately thought vampires. And I suspect it's to do with the dark sunken eyes. It appears to be somebody biting, and that classic vampire look of the hair being pulled back on there, on that. And from James, the man who wasn't there. Nice concept here. Obviously 2 shots put together, but really good black and white conversion to go with it. Really makes that one work on that. I presume, I don't know if you're watching, James, but I presume that was done with the camera on tripod, one shot with your subject there, which might even be yourself, I'm not sure, and then one without, and then the two combined in post-production to create the effect. I must have a go at that at some point. I really like that effect. And this one from John Bamber, again, another great black and white conversion on here. And what I do like about this is he's cropped to the image rather than going to a particular aspect ratio with it. And it works. And he's worked on getting that texture within the steam and within the train on there. We've got the bright areas, we've got the dark areas, and that pulls the whole thing together and works a really good black and white conversion. This one, less so, I think. I don't know quite what it is about it. It looks to me like it's an HDR image that's been converted to black and white. And as such, it loses some of the contrast to it. Now, I don't know whether we can bring some of that back off this, but something about the conversion on it didn't quite sit right for me. And I don't know quite what it is on there. There we see, if I take the clarity back down, we're going back to something a bit more realistic. I think more like that. It's difficult to do it once it's been done and I've only got the finished JPEG on there, but I'd like to see a little bit more that way. So it's less of that monochrome version of an HDR. This one from John Kiss, when he first submitted it to the Facebook group, the verticals were leaning in. I suggested correcting that. And once that was done, this really worked. And this is what I mean about having that true range of brightnesses. We've got pure whites. And how do I know that? Because we've got some burnt out there and we've got true blacks. And the fact that those are plugged up at that point doesn't matter. We've got that true range. We've got plenty of contrast in it. This is a sort of 10 out of 10 image for me on there. And I think finally on this set, another good black and white conversion. And this is an interesting technique. We've got that detail in the sky there. There's nothing lost in that. We've got the full range of brightnesses and darknesses. And I like this out of focus foreground, just offsetting the turret, the castle that we've got there. And I think that's the last one in that set. Wow. So let's have a look at some of the chat while that's been going on. And how many, I've lost my chat window. Right, what have we got in here? Right. Table tennis darkened down to 0. Yeah, I thought it might have been. But it works, Amir, on that. And Bob saying the sparks were real. Oh, right. Okay. No, I just assumed they'd been photoshopped in. So well done, Bob, with that, if they are indeed real. Great. Right. So at this point, I need to have a drink. So I'm going to play in one of the 12020 challenges. This time, it's from Andy Grady. Thank you to those who've submitted. I've still got a couple more to show. If you do want to have a go at it, the challenge is 2 hours, 120 minutes, to take 20 photos with no deletions, consecutive file numbers, no retakes. So every shot is a different subject, and you agree to show the images. So you send them to me. Right, so here we go. Andy's thing. Hopefully I've got this lined up properly. So Right, thank you, Andy, for submitting that. Some great shots in there. Just want to pop over into Lightroom and just call out a couple of them. So here, well, there's a couple I wanted to just talk about. This one, I think I might have mentioned it before, but that bright area does tend to draw the eye away on there. This one, I would like to see either the thing truly square or a little bit further off square with that. But generally, I like, what I really like is the range of things that Andy's put in here, from black and whites of a man walking his dog to details. Now, I know that's an attempt at the Dutch angle. I'd like to see that a little bit more tilted on that one. That's good. I like the fact that we've got just detail shots like the ground on there. I also like the fact that he's managed to get an aerial shot in there. Never mind. This is an interesting one, and there's just something about that shot. I'm assuming, Andy, that you found the shoe just sitting there where it is, and it's just an interesting way of photographing it. I think that one would actually make quite a good black and white, as it happens. I think that'd be quite interesting as a black and white shot. So, heading back over to my notes. Where are we? Right, I'm very aware that time's moved on. I've just got so much to go through on this. I have a feeling I might have to split this and continue it next week, which was not my plan at all. But what... Right, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go through and do some more detailed conversions of your images. That was the challenge I'd set up. While I'm doing that, what I would like you to do, folks, is how many of you want me to carry on? I don't mind I can carry on talking for hours, as you all know. How many think I ought to sort of split this and just continue it next week, or want me to just plow on tonight to get through all your images? Because I've got another full set of images of yours, plus these conversions I wanted to do. If I try to do it tonight, I think it's going to be another 3/4 of an hour. So I'm thinking probably do some of it tonight and then just hang it over till next week and make it a two-parter, this. But let's put it in the chat what you think on there. Meanwhile, I'm going to go over to Lightroom and get on with at least some of these conversions, and I'll have a look on it. So here we go. What? Right, so far we've got we've got 3 carry-ons, three split it. Right, so that's, oh bum. Right, we've got a problem. My catalogue's not going to open. Lightroom's crashed. Excuse me a moment, folks. This might have taken the whole thing out of our hands. If I can't get this open, if I can't get into Lightroom, I can't do any of it. Right. Right. I'm just going to show you what's gone on here, because this might happen to you if you're a Lightroom user. I think it's important to show. I can't get into Lightroom. It says the catalogue's locked, and I clearly haven't got Lightroom open. So the lock, what's happened is it's crashed, but it's left the lock file there. So the solution is very simply just to delete that one file And now if I try to open Lightroom, review catalog, open, this time it will let me in. So how's that chat looking? What are people saying at the moment? Yeah, split if possible. Split. Let me do a count up on here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 splits, and next week for carrying on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At the moment, the splits have it and carry on next week. I'm going to do at least one conversion in Lightroom now, and then I'll come back and have another look in here and count up again on the chat. So right, let me get the images I'm looking for in here. The ones let me do this one of Anthony's as the first one. This one I was going to try and do on the iPhone with it, but I'm just going to do it in here. This is the reason I said, Anthony, the first thing we need to do is get the exposure right when we do a conversion. So this one is underexposed. So if I bring that up, you've then got that pattern in there that we can see, whereas previously it was just about all dark. I'm going to bring the contrast up at the moment and the texture up and clarity up, and that will give me something that I can then start converting. So I actually quite like that. That is weird but interesting. I'll go full screen. So now I go and look for a profile. So I'm going to browse, and I'm just going to look through and see which gives me the most interesting sort of look on this. Number 2, just too bright. 1. 3's not bad, one of my favourites. Yeah, I'm going to go with 3 on that, and then close. And now I've done that, I can go down to the black and white sliders, and I can then control individual parts of it. So we want to be able to see these people in the middle here. Assume it's people on there. So we can play around with that, and I can control what's light, what's dark, so I get something I'm happy with on there. And you can see each of these controls the individual colours. I do like that. So that would be the sort of translation I would do with it. Now, could I do that on an iPhone? It would be very difficult, not impossible, to do it on the iPhone. And the app I recommend for, not on any phone, sorry, I know you're Android, Anthony, is Snapseed. It's a free app. And hopefully, if we do split to next week, I'll try and have that going, and we'll have a look at doing some conversions in Snapseed on there. But that's how I would do that one. Similarly here, well, so that would be my conversion of it. That was your original. You can see big difference on there. The Robin, well, the thing with the Robin is what as we look at this image, what is it that stands out? And the thing that stands out is the red of the breast on there, and potentially the feet. So when we come to do the conversion, I'm thinking about how am I going to make that stand out in black and white. So go into the develop module with it. Again, I'm looking for, I start with my color profile, and I'll do a browse on it, and I'll look down and see what we've got. Well, remember what I said about the different what the different profiles do. And here with the filters, if I go to something like the blue filter, you can't tell it's a robin. If I go to the red one, that's become a lighter colour. So I would go with red filter, then down into the black and whites, thinking, right, I want that red there to show up, so I'll bring the red slider up, except it's not going to do much. You notice? I bring it up and it does very little. And that's because most of it's actually orange. And I can lighten it up that way, a little bit with the yellow as well. And that allows you to see something. Now, is that a good image for doing a black and white conversion on? I'm not sure that it is, to be honest with that. So, one I wanted to have a look at is this one from Mark Gerard that he sent in, and this one's going to take. This is a full conversion, so let's have a go with this. That's the basic image straight out of camera. So meanwhile, let's just have a look how that vote's going, and. Oh, I've lost it. Here we go. Yeah, I think generally the consensus is next week. One quick question. Those of you who said carry on, I presume it's because you've got images that you want to see converted tonight on there. If you have, in yours is one of the images on my Lightroom screen. Well, let me pull Lightroom up. If one of your images is on this screen here and you want me to do it tonight, put in the chat. These are the ones I'm going to do the full edits on. Those, if you name yourself tonight to say you want yours done tonight, I'll do yours tonight, and then the rest I'll do next week. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. So anymore, I'm just going to do this one of Mark's, and then I'm not going to do any more of these in-depth ones tonight, and I'll finish it that way. So right, let's do this one. Full screen. Right, first thing on here. Is the exposure good? It's actually not bad at all on there. First thing I would then do would be the transform to get my verticals right. Does auto do it for me? It does, but I've lost the top of the building. Can we solve that? Yes, we can. What we do is we scale it to bring that back, to get that in there, and then crop to the scaled version. And hopefully I can do that to somewhere like there and up to there. I think I've got it all in this corner. So there's my building. Now I want this to be black and white. So first thing I want to do is, looking at that, I want to bring back the detail in the sky. So to do that, I'm going to bring my highlights down, try and get some of that detail back already. Can't. I'm going to want a bit of contrast in there. Right, let's go back, go and have a look at a profile and browse. Have a look what's going to get me closest to what I want with this. And of these, the one that's getting closest and that's bringing me detail in the sky is 6. So I'm going to start with that. That's my start point on there. That's not looking too bad. I'm starting to see detail in my sky. But now we want to bring up a little bit on the shadows on there. We definitely want some texture in, just a bit, and clarity. That's already helping. Now, can we get more detail in the sky? Let's see if we can do it with those sliders. The blue is normally the one. And if I bring that down, now, you see what's happening here? It's getting very, very noisy and grainy with that because I'm pushing it a long way. We've also got halos on the building if I zoom in. So let's deal with the noise first of all. In the Detail tab, let's go have a look at a noisy area, zoom in on that. And noise reduction, well, believe it or not, look what's happened there. Isn't that incredible? I haven't done any luminance noise reduction. I've only done color noise reduction because that noise was caused by the different colors in there. I can control it. If I take it out and bring that up. So I've managed to get rid of it without having to do any real noise reduction on it. I just put a little bit in on that. I don't like that halo effect. Right. That I would have to go into Photoshop to deal with to get rid of that. Now, if I edit in Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, I can show you how I do that very quickly. I zoom right in on the edge. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I can show you on this edge down here. What I use is the clone stamp, and I use it in darken mode. Hold the space bar so I can drag that around, and I'm going to, I want a reasonable size brush. That would be big, more than big enough. Hold the Alt key to sample, and I'm sampling just off to one side, and you can see now, because I'm in darken mode, the only thing that's getting affected is the halo, so I can just quite happily go all the way down there and get rid of it. And it is a very, very effective way of doing it. Hold the space bar, drag up all the way down. Oh, not very accurate. And in fact, I don't need to be that accurate as I'm doing it. And it's one of my sort of favorite little Photoshop tricks, that one. So we'll zoom back out, Control-0. That solved it. And now, if I was doing this for real, I would do the whole thing all the way around, checking all those halos, and File, Exit. And that will take me back over to Lightroom with the corrected version. Come on, there we go. That's the corrected version without the halo on there. At this point, I start thinking about my vignette in here. So I think a vignette will help with that sky. So Effects, bring in the vignette like that. Feather it off, and the midpoint, because I want it in quite a way. And again, I will do my usual trick of put my on there, hide that, and just bring it out to the point where I think it's more or less gone, which I think is about there. And you can see this time I'm -31 with it, so that's probably about the right place for it. I would love to get a little bit more detail in that sky with it, and it might actually even be possible with the tone curve by just darkening the light, playing around with that. Does that give me a little bit more? But something like that on there. So that is my edit on this image of Mark's. Now, a couple of things just to say about this. I saw the image beforehand. I didn't try any of this beforehand. So that really is a live conversion, something I've done on the fly using those tools. And you can see how I've gone into different tools to solve different problems with it and to create different effects on there with that. So right, I'm just going to go over to the chat and see what we have got on here. When I find it, I keep losing my windows tonight. Right, part 2 next week. Happy to change till next week. Also happy for next week. Right, okay. So I'm not going to do any more of those major conversions now. What I am going to do is I'm just going to look at a few more of your images very briefly, see if I can get through some of those, the quick fire ones, which was my red select. And there's a lot of these. I'm not going to be able to do all of them, provide feedback on them. Let me just pick a few on here and then I'll save the rest for next week. So, I'll do it this way. One from John. I've picked on this, John, because it's not one of your best, and this goes to the point where I want to say, think about your composition first before thinking about black and white on there. What's your subject here? Is it really this hedge? Or is it the bandstand? If it's the bandstand, the hedge is hiding it, it's not in the right place on there. Black and white conversion is not bad, but I don't think the image warranted a conversion. It's converting it to black and white doesn't save it. This, on the other hand, is one I think would make a really good black and white conversion, but you've left it in colour. I'm going to challenge you, John, on this particular image, convert it to black and white. I think you're using Affinity rather than Lightroom or Photoshop, but the techniques that I've shown will still apply to that. So your challenge for next week is to do the black and white conversion on that, and based on some of the techniques I was talking about. This is a brilliant black and white conversion that you've done, and I really like it. The only thing that slightly bothers me is the lighthouse a little bit close to the centre, and I'm trying to find a way where this will crop where it isn't, and I ain't got it. That's still in the centre with it. I think you need to lose a little bit on that side, maybe down to somewhere like that with it would work. And I would possibly even be tempted to lose a little bit of the sky, because that gives us the 1/3, 2/3 split with it. But it's a lovely black and white conversion. And another great black and white conversion on here, I mentioned it on the Facebook group, really like that. And that's a lovely abstract as well. Again, nice conversion. We've got lots of blacks, a little bit plugged up in places. Maybe you've gone a little bit too far with that, and you see how there's no detail left in there, none in there. It doesn't matter too much about that, but I'd like to try and see a little bit more detail in those plugged up areas. No. The next two, again, John, I just wanted to talk about these. I really like this image. Needs a little bit of work in post-production, but I want to ask a question. Why have you put this one in as well? Sorry if I'm sounding a little bit critical here, but one of the things I want to try and do is push people. And I've seen you improve an awful lot recently, John, and I'm going to keep pushing you to improve further. When you've got two images like that and you're putting them into a group for people to look at, people will judge you on the worst of the two images, which is very clearly that one, because your subject's hit on the bottom, you've got a blank area at the top, doesn't do anything, the person's not posing. That one, nice pose, you've got a nice bit of reflection. Yes, you've got negative space, but it actually works with it. You might want to crop it a little bit, but something like that. That's a much stronger one. Just don't put the weaker one in. And I want to challenge you, another challenge is to think about the images you're putting into the group. Where you've got two similar ones like that, decide which one is best and put that in, rather than the one that's where you've got two. Find the best one and just put that one in. How are we doing on this? Right, I don't know whether Karen's watching, but let me go through her images and I shall stop at that point on here. Karen is a model I've worked with who's also doing some photography, and I'm really pleased that she is. Nice shot along the beach on there, nice black and white conversion. Again, it would benefit from a little bit more in the sky, and we can do that using a graduated tool. So if I bring down a graduated filter there and just bring the exposure down a little bit on that, maybe the highlights a little bit, and bring up the clarity, we then get a nice dramatic sky on that image. So a little bit of a tweak to it that way would help with that particular image, Karen. Nice shot of a lighthouse. Lighthouses are popular at the moment, I'm seeing in the group. So the only thing I would say on there is try and avoid bullseyeing it. So maybe move it to a third line. Get down lower, I think, with it as well. So you're shooting more across the sea. That would move the horizon lower, something like that, with that one on there. With that, and that's a photo of Karen herself modelling at my studio. I won't say too much about the image because I don't think it's fair. I don't know who the photographer is on that, but Karen just put it in because it was one in my studio. And I'll pick up with Kev's images next week. So let's go back over to there. Let me have a look at the chat and let's finish this mammoth session off by looking at the chat. So just to wrap up, wow, what a long session tonight. So part 2 will be next week. Not what I was planning for next week, but we'll carry on with a black and white theme. I'll have to think about what my challenge for going in the group chat in the Facebook group during the week is. Thank you to everyone who's submitted images, and it's been great to see so many people taking part and so many people watching as well tonight on there. So to wrap up, as ever, if you are new to this and you found it helpful, please subscribe, please comment, please like, and please share. And if you did like it, then think about buying me a cup of tea. Maybe it'll be your name on the mug next week. So the link for that is down below the video. So next week, another 120/20 challenge on there. Probably won't be the return of the 3-minute challenge because I've got so much to do with black and white still to cover. And then the week after will be portraiture. So keep sharing your black and white images in the Facebook group. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to really challenge you this week and say black and white, but black and white portraiture. Let's try, since it's the halfway between, it's going to be between those two sessions. So any images of people that have been converted to black and white for your challenge in the Facebook group this coming week. And until we're chatting in the group, or until I see you next Sunday night, as ever, keep making great photos. And thanks for watching, folks. Bye for now. Right, this is the point I record the alternative ending for when I have a cut down version of the live stream. So let's do that. Thanks for watching this cut down version of In Studio Live. The full version is now in my Academy. The details of that are on the screen behind me and links down below to subscribe to that. I'll also be putting highlights of this here on YouTube and across my two channels, my Lightroom channel and maybe some on the travel channel as well. So hopefully I'll see you in one of those three places. So until next time, keep making great images and I'll see you in the next Live from In Studio.